Hello everyone, welcome to another Grimgar video. Today's video is going to be a little different than what I'm used to. Also, sorry for no VTuber avatar today. I'm actually getting this video out really quickly because I have a very busy week and I have a lot of stuff to do over on my gaming YT and on my Twitch. By the way, link in bio. Me and my friends were talking about how there is a lot of references to D&D in the Grimgar light novel, to the point where the character's early ability to use their magic is actually also a reference to the D&D stat system. In the light novel, Harihiro makes a lot of references to Ranta being bad at Dread Knight magic, and we see him misuse his own magic early on in the story. And then my mind was blown because I realized that Ranta specifically has little charisma. For those of you that don't know, classes like Ranta, if we put them into actual D&D, their physical attacks would probably be something along the lines of strength or dexterity, which we'll get into what those are later on. And for his magic, it would be something like charisma. And this is because Dread Knight magic is very, very similar to Warlock magic. Dread Knight magic is all about buffing themselves, debuffing enemies, and summoning demons. But since Ranta has shit for charisma, his magic is terrible. At least until later on in the story where he gets more responsible, starts being more open, and being slightly more charismatic, then he's able to use his magic quite a lot. And you see him using magic a lot more later on, especially in Volume 14++ in his side story. So I thought it'd be a lot of fun for me to take characters from Grimgar in the beginning of the story, like Harihiro, Ranta, Yume, Mary, and all those characters, and talk about what their stats would be if they were a level 1 character in D&D. Yes, this is going to be very speculatory because there is no actual stats in Grimgar whatsoever. If this video does well, let's aim for maybe 100 likes. That'd be pretty nice. Please, thank you. I'll talk more about these characters' Volume 1 stats. And maybe I'll even talk about other characters like Renji. By the way, if we do Renji, his stats will be fucking insane. And because we talked about Ranta earlier in the video, might as well actually make the first video talking about his stats in the early section of Grimgar. And maybe later on, if you guys want me to, I'll talk about what his stats would look like in late Grimgar. Also, since Ranta's like the most popular character in Grimgar for some reason, it's good for views, I guess. Before we begin, just keep in mind that I'm currently doing a fun little event over my Twitch and gaming page here on YouTube. If you're able to get me to 500 followers over on my Twitch before the end of January, and get me to 50 followers over on my gaming page on YouTube, me and my friends are going to do a fun little drinking game. If you want to know more, check the card in the upper right corner, because we're going to get sloshed. But anyway, let's begin. And I just want to make this very, very clear that the stats we're using are level 1 stats, so we're only going with Volume 1. So everything the characters do in solely Volume 1 is what we're going to be looking at in this video. So it's no secret that Ranta and the rest of their party is honestly kind of built like crap. Sorry for a little bit surprised, but yeah, when you have really crappy physical ability, your stats are going to be low. Spoiler warning, Ranta's stats for early Grimgar are either very average, or if we're talking about mental stats, they're well below average. For those of you that are not familiar with the D&D stat system, I found a nice little website called DMing with Charisma. On this website, they explain stats very simply. So I'm going to use this website specifically to give rough estimates to the character's stats. The D&D stats are Strength, which is probably the most simplest of stats to actually understand in this. Strength essentially makes it so you can lift things, push things. If you have under 10, you have trouble lifting heavy objects. And if you have really low levels of strength, then you have the hardest time lifting your own body weight. Dexterity, which is essentially hand-eye coordination. Low levels of dexterity mean you have really bad reaction time. And high levels of dexterity means you're very graceful, very elegant, really good at moving around with your arms and legs and able to dodge objects. Constitution is essentially your HP, but also it has to do with how much physical labor you can also do. And it also has to do with your ability to resist sicknesses. If you have under level 10, for example, say level 9, you're unable to even do a full day's hard work. Higher levels of Constitution means that you're really hard to wear down and extremely durable. Basically just able to keep going for days. Intelligence essentially makes it so you can retain information better, are able to recall information a lot easier than most people, and essentially make it so you know things and put 2 and 2 together faster. You can solve puzzles and problems much faster than other people. Low levels of this, well, you're basically just a brain dead brick. For example, around level 5, you start having trouble even being able to use proper levels of thought. Wisdom is essentially knowing your surroundings, being able to pick up on things quickly, and understand what is happening around you. It's different from intelligence, because in wisdom, you can detect things faster, you can notice things much quicker, and you're able to essentially read people better. Wisdom is usually a lot better for decision making and are usually used by leaders a lot more. Low levels of wisdom are basically people who just don't pick up on things. Also, people with low levels of wisdom don't really, how do I put this, understand common sense. And charisma is essentially your ability to convince people to do what you want to do, essentially. Intimidation is also part of charisma, so you can intimidate people to do what you want them to do, essentially. You're also more or less in higher levels of this life of the party, very likable, very generous, really nice to get to know. People just kind of like you, essentially. Or people will fear you because intimidation, again, is also part of it as well. Low levels of this, which I found this very insulting to my person. You are essentially introverted, shy, or you are rude and make people uncomfortable and have serious trouble thinking of others' well-being. Each of these stats go from level 1 to level 20, and every 2 levels, the description changes. So for example, average is actually level 10 to 11. Everything above that is above average, and everything below that is below average. Also, for everyone who plays D&D, I know that the way these stats are being described, especially charisma, is probably not to all of your liking. And the levels and descriptions of these stats are, quite frankly, kind of all subjective. And because I know it's probably going to come up in the comment section, I know that charisma for some people is essentially the stat that shows you how incredibly strong someone's personality is. But I don't know how to use that description in, like, number form, essentially. Especially with Ranta, because Ranta fluctuates back and forth constantly with his personality throughout the light novels, so I don't even know how to quantify that for him. And yes, I know that bartering and haggling are essentially as part of charisma. We're not taking that into account in part of this video, mainly because in Grimgar, bartering is considered a skill that you just learn from the Dread Knights Guild instead of something that is associated with your charisma. But that's essentially why I'm using this website, because it simplifies these stats to a very easy to understand level, and I can use that to actually make these stats easier for me specifically. Okay, now that you guys understand how stats work in this, let's go into the first volume of Grimgar, level 1, and actually get to a good understanding of how Ranta stacks up in the beginning of a D&D campaign. Spoilers, it's not good. Ranta's strength, for example, would probably be pretty average. In terms of physical strength, if you're at 10, you're literally able to just pull your own weight. Thanks to How to Hero, we know that Ranta is at least 3rd place in physical strength in their party in the early section of Grimgar. 1st place being Moguzu, and funny enough, 2nd place being Yume. So quite frankly, I'm willing to give Ranta somewhere between a 10 to 11 in physical strength, honestly. I know it's not that impressive, but Ranta's not really well known for physical strength or being well known for being weak either. His class is primarily a speed class, dodging, bobbing, and weaving, so his physical strength doesn't really have much to do with him. So I'm willing to give him average to slightly above average. Dexterity, okay, this is where Ranta's class is going to be shining, because Ranta's actually pretty good at dodging and bobbing and weaving. Even in early Grimgar, you see him moving around goblins quite a lot and stabbing them and helping out Moguzu a lot in the front lines. Ranta is easily the fastest in their party, even in early Grimgar. And dexterity is all about dodging and actually hitting your targets. When Ranta goes in for the kill, he usually hits. And he's really mobile. But he still does have trouble dodging goblins. Weak goblins at that are not exactly meant to be fast. And in Volume 1 of Grimgar, he does trip over himself once in a while. So at most, I'd be willing to give him a 15. Now for Constitution. Ranta is one of the most hard-to-kill motherfuckers in this book. But I can't go past the first light novel, so we're gonna go only with the first light novel. Ranta was able to get sliced in the neck and not immediately die and bleed out. Minato had to go over to him and heal him, but he still had low amounts of blood, but he still kept fighting, even though he was very wheezy and tired. Ranta's actually pretty tough. Now, Ranta's not on the same level as Moguzo, but, like, he's up there. So I'd be willing to give Ranta, like, a 14 in Constitution. Constitution from 14 to 15 on the website, it actually says, able to labor 12 hours most days, which Ranta honestly does seem to be able to keep going. He's one of the only few people in the first light novel that keeps suggesting to the rest of the team that they keep fighting monsters and get more money, so he's able to keep going more than everyone else. Dread Knights are all about speed, and he got stabbed in the leg a couple of times, and he just kept running. So I'm willing to give him a bare minimum of 14. And now, time to get to the stats that he is terrible at, especially in early Grimgar. Intelligent. All right, there's no surprise here. Ranta's a fucking idiot. Oh my god, I just read the intelligence stats. So, all right, get this. At level 7, tell me this doesn't sound like fucking Ranta. Often misuses and misunderstands words. And yes, before anybody says it, it does also sound like Yume, especially in the light novel, good lord. But Ranta also has trouble remembering words, pronouncing words, and using words correctly as well early on in the light novel. By the way, for anybody who's curious about level 8 to 9, has trouble following trains of thought and forgets most unimportant thing. Funny enough, this actually describes Ranta later in the light novel when he's in the light realm, where he forgets he can't use Dread Knight magic, but he still tries to. By that point, he should actually be smarter. So I think giving him a 7 is actually a very fair estimate. And now we're talking about wisdom, which Wisdom has to do with you being able to pick up on small details and notice things around you, which Ranta actually isn't that bad at later on, but early on in Grimgar, he's terrible at it. At bare minimum, level 10 of Wisdom says, makes reasonable decisions most of the time. Level 8 to 9 of Wisdom sounds a lot like Ranta, if I'm being honest. Forgets or outright does not consider options before taking action. Early Grimgar, that's very much Ranta, but I'm willing to say that level 6 to 7 is also early Ranta. Often fails to exert common sense. And this is the thing, Ranta's decision-making and ability to use common sense is kind of inconsistent in the first volume. And not in a bad way, just in a way where it's hard to actually peg him down. When he first appears in Grimgar, he lets Tadahiro, at that point, who was a stranger to him, go out and look for information and gather stuff around the town while he stays with Yume and Chihiro. He also might have been a coward to want to go out into the world because he's confused and doesn't have information, but it's still one of those weird things. Throughout the first light novel, however, he does make better decisions later on, but he does this by letting Tadahiro make all the choices as the leader. The reason I bring this up is because Tadahiro and Ranta don't exactly get along. Ranta's still wise enough to understand that Haru is better at making choices than he is. However, this is the same guy that, after losing Minato, in the light novel at least, proceeds to say that if he ever met the goblins who killed Minato, he wants the entire team to stand their ground even if they die. This is before, mind you, Tadahiro and his team gathered more skills and got better at actually communicating with each other and actually managing each other's abilities and powers and having better team synergy. So, yeah, this is directly after Minato died, mind you. The reason why this brings Ranta down in terms of wisdom is mainly because he essentially is ignoring everyone's feelings or not picking up on everyone's feelings because they're all essentially depressed after Minato died, so their morale is plummeted and is absolutely terrible. And two, you have an entire new priest who you don't really know yet, and you want to jump into a fight that you probably can't win just out of spite? That's incredibly stupid. Ranta kind of probably knew this to an extent. This is why he allowed Tadahiro to most likely take charge, because realistically, no one else in the party could have. I think instead of giving him at the lowest a 6 or at the highest a 9, I think I'll just give him a solid 8 in wisdom, which is still below average, but Ranta, in terms of intelligence and wisdom, is below average. And now, to talk about the stat that has inspired this video, Charisma. The average stat of Charisma is 10, as I've stated before, and on 10, it says, capable of polite conversation. Ranta in early Grimgar is barely capable of having conversations with anyone politely, or is barely even able to talk to anyone without insulting them. Hell, I'm reading volume 19 as I record this video right now, and the thing is, Ranta still sometimes has trouble having any level of polite conversation. He can sometimes now, but it's still really bad sometimes too. Or he also harasses women quite a lot in early Grimgar, especially in the light novel. Because again, that was toned down a lot in the anime and the manga, but in the light novel, he was really, really bad. So let's see the stat of Charisma for 8 to 9 real quick. Something of a bore, or makes people mildly uncomfortable. Now, Ranta does make people uncomfortable and they also want to punch him half the time, but I think we can go a little lower with Ranta. Level 6 to 7 of Charisma is terribly reticent, which is basically you're super, super shy, and this is the part where it goes into Ranta, uninteresting or rude. And now we can go even lower for Ranta, unfortunately, because we've seen him completely ignore the needs of other people, and level 4 to 5 says, has trouble thinking of other people. But this is where character development starts to kind of clash a little bit with the stat system a little bit. Ranta, at the very beginning of the story, the first half of the first volume, he didn't really think of others. It's not that he didn't care about people, it's just that he never really put much thought into how others around him felt. Until Minato died. And that does actually bump him up a bit, because you do see some signs of him thinking of others' well-being in the first light novel. I'd be willing to be nice to Ranta to give him a 7, but like there's times where his charisma is so damn low that it goes to a 6, honestly. It fluctuates with him a lot. But here's what Ranta's character sheet would look like if you played him as a D&D character. Jesus Christ, these stats can be really bad. Some of them can be pretty good, but they're just so bad, which works for Ranta because early Grimgar, these characters are absolutely terrible at what they do, so their stats being this bad actually does make sense. But if you guys enjoy this video and stuff like this, let me know. I'll make more character sheets for these characters in Grimgar. I really want to do Tadahiro next, but I'll let you guys choose it in the comments down below. Or I might put a poll up if this video does well. Let me know. See you guys later. Bye-bye.